Chi da gi jin so sanam ki do la pen chir sangye tu par shon chi tong de wei ge tong den par ge chi dan ya tong ne ki ge tong de wa ge chi dan ya me pe tong pa tong min de wa ge chi Vinh sha dong tong der wei tong nyam chen po na ne par gyur chi ten sa wei Lama Rinpoché da gi chi ur pe me de chen la ka chen chen per kun ne je sun te ku sun te kin ne je sa tu sun chen bel yong la cha sen
Namda la zeve injenye döngun zijin zijirani jeduk lebab zin ganda zibe zanrar mari mundu dungara jizi dozo gena buje daze yanar ruju yandenzu Roda jando nyama nilo legi chakro doze Mare menza donga nyugo jenye jose rede Dene daijin zaju darazo nyonde luzo jaraze dobu Jodra jodan joni jande dalo menza Chambe yang lan du Tede je je janra besagi Dale timuk mumbarat zen Kadan tenju chunlung dobai Lodre bobe nawa zadu Donc, on va reprendre la présentation à l'endroit où on s'est...
Where we left off yesterday. So Pierre will continue with the presentation, but I just wanted to share something because yesterday we left off with a question that Christoph asked concerning sovereign mind. What is sovereign mind? And can sovereign mind be contaminated? In the answer that I gave, I tried to come back to the logic of the Abhidharmakosha because that's what we're studying. But I didn't have the presence of mind to go a bit further and think about why he may have asked this question. And in the discussion that Sylvestre and I had, we realized, and also I exchanged with Christoph as well, that the question concerning what sovereign mind is and what mind in general is very connected to what we learn in the Mahayana and related to the teachings that Jigmé Rinpoché has been giving the last few days relative to Buddha nature. And so maybe the explanations shared here didn't seem to correspond, and the answer that I gave wasn't really well adapted. So I just wanted to share an additional remark in relation to this question, which is that here we are studying the Abhidharmakosha, which is a particular context with a particular view that is expressed, the view of the Vaibhashika, which is a school of thought which belongs to the foundational vehicle. The way that mind is considered, the way that mind functions, and the nature of mind in a certain way, though the basis is similar in certain ways, it's not the same. The presentation of the Abhidharmakosha is different from the presentation that's given of Buddha nature. We'll talk about the consciousnesses which is a theme that we find within the foundational vehicle and the great vehicle. But in the great vehicle, there are much more extensive and vast explanations that present the nature of mind. And in a different way than the way that it's presented in the Abhidharmakosha, for example. So it's good to try to see that there's no contradiction between what we're looking at here in the Abhidharmakosha. These are really foundational teachings, and everything else, though it is vaster, what is presented in the Mahayana relies on this basis. There's no contradiction. Simply in the Mahayana, things go further. But also not to forget that the context here is that of the Abhidharmakosha with its specific view, and not to mix things and create amalgamations, because we may get lost if we do that. Alright, so now we will continue with the 5 great bases that we started to describe yesterday. We covered the entirety of the first basis, the basis of every sovereign mind, and we started the basis of virtuous sovereign mind, and then we'll continue with the following 3. And it is likely that we won't go much further than this for our during this session of the Chinrezi curriculum. Yesterday we left off with flexibility, which is a mental event. And now we will continue with equanimity, Dongnyum in Tibetan. We can distinguish 3 mental events in relation, that are related to equanimity. The first is equanimous application. That's the first one. Then we'll get a shorter look at equanimous sensation, which corresponds to neutral sensation. So second, equanimous or neutral sensation. And third, limitless equanimity, which is among the 4 limitless qualities which are recited daily. We'll begin with the first equanimity, which is equanimous application. This application is like a remedy that is an obstacle to torpor and agitation, which are the 2 obstacles to meditation. It's a remedy to the obstacles, it's a remedy which acts as an obstacle to torpor and agitation, which are themselves the obstacles to meditation. Torpor, which we spoke about yesterday, and which will be presented in the great basis of sovereign mind marked by afflictions. And then there's agitation. So we'll describe both of these here. That equanimous application acts as an obstacle too. So torpor is a state that is not clear, that is lacking in clear focus. It is a heavy, somewhat obscured, fairly obscured state. When we are in this state, it can present certain dangers. He doesn't say exactly which dangers, but he says in any case we need to wake up, take hold of ourselves, otherwise we're in kind of a stupid state, a bit dumb. And there are ideas of absence of clarity, without clear focus, heaviness, obscurity. He also clarifies that the word jing in Tibetan means stuck or kind of floundering, like an elephant who stumbles into a swamp, a mud swamp, and can't get out anymore. This is the image that we can think of when we hear torpor. This state. It is one of the flaws or defects of concentration, meditative absorption, which we talked about earlier. That's concerning torpor. Concerning agitation, the second obstacle to meditation, agitation is linked with desire attachment. Agitation or excitement is another translation for this. This is when the mind is distracted by the object of its attachment. So what we call equanimous application, this first form of equanimity, is this mental event that is free of these two flaws in meditation, torpor and agitation. When we have attained this capacity, this equanimous application, then these two obstacles will no longer be a problem. That was the first equanimity. And the second equanimity, as stated, is neutral sensation, which is neither pleasant nor unpleasant. And that's all Khelzang Puntso said here for neutral sensation, the second type of equanimity. The third equanimity is limitless equanimity. This is not experiencing attachment for one's friends, nor aversion for one's enemies. Not experiencing attachment for one's friends, nor aversion towards one's enemies. It is not considering certain people to be close and thus appreciating them, and others to be far and thus to reject them. Limitless equanimity is not considering things in this way, not experiencing attachment for one's friends nor aversion for one's enemies. That's equanimity. the fourth mental event of the great basis of a virtuous sovereign mind. Next comes the fifth mental event, respect. Sometimes translated in the Khejuk, translated as feeling of shame, but the definition is a little bit different. Respect is ngotsa shipa in Tibetan. Khelzang Puntso says that later in the text it is said that respect refers to inspired confidence. Respect is inspired confidence. This is respecting one's Lama and one's spiritual path. This respect for the Lama and for the Dharma is what we call respect. That was respect. Next, the sixth in this list, consideration, which is translated as restraint in the Khejuk. The term in Tibetan is Telyupa. Some discussion about how to pronounce it. Tel. Consideration is gratitude that we can experience for our benevolent, kind Lama. This is consideration. When we think about the kindness of our Master, a feeling of gratitude will emerge and we will take refuge in them. This feeling that fills us up when we think about the kindness of our Master and when we take refuge in them is what is called consideration. And so now comes a short point about the difference between these mental events that have just been described, respect and consideration, as they are defined here and as they are defined elsewhere in the Khejuk. As we can see here, the definition of respect is different from that found in the Khejuk. When we talk about respect in the entry to the state of a Pandita, it's in relation to oneself. And it can be defined as decency in relation to oneself of not accomplishing, carrying out harmful actions. The decency in relation to oneself of not accomplishing or carrying out non-virtuous actions. Khelzang Puntso gave the example. For example, I'm a monk, and I will think it would be inappropriate for a monk to act in this or that way. We can understand, for example, in contradiction with the precepts that I have engaged to. We don't carry out non-virtuous actions in relation to this decency linked with or in relation to ourselves. Similarly, the definition of consideration is also different than the one found in the entry to the state of a Pandita. In the entry to the state of a Pandita, consideration is decency in relation to others or others' view. We won't carry out non-virtuous actions because we have moral conscience in relation to others, because we fear their judgment. What if we consider the definitions from the entry to the state of a Pandita, the definitions of self-respect and consideration for others? They are identical in the sense that they allow for avoiding harmful actions. For example, for someone who is a monk and is considering drinking a glass of alcohol, there is this possibility. Either I'll think, oh, I'm a monk, I won't drink alcohol because this goes against the precepts that I have committed to. In this case, this is decency in relation to oneself, self-respect. Or I might think, oh no, I won't drink because someone might see me. Not quite the same. That is decency in relation to others' view, consideration for others. So we can see that these two are identical in that they allow for abandoning non-virtuous attitude. However, they differ in terms of the thought underlying them. The function of self-respect and consideration for others is preserving oneself from harmful actions, from all negativities. This is the function of these two mental events. Once again, this is still connected to the definitions from the entry to the state of a Pandita. As we saw, the definitions in the Abhidharmakosha are linked with one's master and one's spiritual path. As far as I know, however, the words in Tibetan are the same. So those were the fifth and sixth mental events of the great basis of virtuous mind. Next come another group of two, the seventh and eighth mental events, which are called the two roots of virtue in the root text. Stanza 25, third line, the two roots of virtue. They refer to the absence of desire attachment, and the absence of hatred aversion. absence of attachment, absence of aversion. We'll begin with absence of attachment, machakpa in Tibetan. This absence of attachment is perceiving the inherent flaws in pleasant objects that we experience. It is perceiving the flaws of these objects that we experience and thus not being attached to them. That is absence of attachment. We perceive the inherent flaws in pleasant objects. We also call this mental event non-attachment. It's another translation for this term. For example, if we reflect again and again on the impurity of our body, at one point or another, we will no longer be attached to this body. Perceiving the flaws of pleasant objects and not being attached to them. Next is absence of aversion, the second root of virtue. She tong me pa. Absence of aversion refers to love and compassion. Absence of aversion is love and compassion. Love, jampa in Tibetan, and compassion, ninche. These two things are what is called the mental event of absence of aversion. The function of these two roots of virtue is that, on this basis, we do not engage in harmful behavior. We do not apply ourselves to non-virtuous dharmas. Due to these two roots of virtue, we do not engage in harmful behavior. And there are two more in this great basis of virtuous sovereign mind. The ninth mental event in this list is non-violence, or absence of ill will. In Tibetan, nampar mi tsewa. In the context of the Abhidharmakosha, what we understand from absence of ill will is not wishing for someone else to suffer. Not wishing for someone else to suffer. The function of nonviolence is not committing actions that could harm others. Not committing harmful actions. That is non-violence. The last mental event in this second great basis is enthusiastic effort, sometimes translated as perseverance. In Tibetan, tsuntu. Enthusiastic effort is having inspiration for virtue, for the roots of virtue. Enthusiastic effort is having inspiration for virtue. Therefore, all effort is not enthusiastic effort. We can put effort into non-virtuous actions, and this is not what is meant by enthusiastic effort. The definition of enthusiastic effort is having inspiration for virtue, and the function of enthusiastic effort is accomplishing all the virtues, completing all the virtues. If enthusiastic effort is present, the entirety of the accumulation of virtue and all of the fruits will be fully accomplished, completed. You will find success in what you undertake. This concludes this great basis of virtuous sovereign mind. These 10 mental events are always present around a virtuous sovereign mind. They make up the great basis of virtuous sovereign mind. In other words, whenever there is, or wherever there is, a virtuous sovereign mind, no matter what, these 10 mental events are present. Before we continue, take a short seated break. We'll continue with the third of the 5 great bases. The third great basis is that of sovereign mind marked by afflictive obscurations. There are 6 mental events. These 6 mental events accompany every sovereign mind associated with afflictive obscurations. Not associated with, marked by afflictive obscurations. We find this in stanza 26, lines 1 through 3. Ignorance, absence of attentive care, laziness, absence of confidence, torpor and agitation always appear around a sovereign mind marked by afflictive obscurations. Ignorance is the first one. Ignorance is not knowing the mode of being of the 4 noble truths, the 4 truths of the noble ones. The function of ignorance is being the reference point or the foundation for the appearance of all afflictive obscurations. The function of ignorance is being the reference point or foundation for the appearance of all afflictive obscurations. We'll continue with the second mental event that makes up the great basis of sovereign mind marked by afflictive obscurations. The second one here is the absence of attentive care. Yesterday, when we looked at the great basis of a virtuous sovereign mind, we talked about attentive care. As a reminder, we saw that attentive care is turning away from harmful acts and distancing oneself from non-virtuous acts and habituating oneself to virtuous actions. This is attentive care. The absence of attentive care is the opposite of attentive care. Thus, the absence of attentive care is not avoiding harmful activities. When afflictive obscurations arise, if we know that they have arisen, we try to stop them quickly. But if we know that afflictive obscurations are present and we don't do anything to stop them, if we are lax, we could say, in relation to these afflictive obscurations, and we don't think about restraining them, it is very likely that non-virtuous dharmas will develop and virtuous dharma will decrease. And this is what happens with this mental event of absence of attentive care. We won't try to avoid negative activities. As we don't do this, as we don't try to avoid them, then non-virtue will increase and virtue will decrease. That's the second mental event here. Now we come to the third, laziness. Laziness is the opposite of enthusiastic effort. In other words, the last one in the list of the 10 mental events that accompany virtuous sovereign mind, enthusiastic effort. So this is the opposite of enthusiastic effort. It is not being inspired by virtuous action. Khelzang Puntso presented 3 types of laziness. The first is the laziness of being attached to negative actions. For example, if I'm bored because there's nothing to do, I might think, let's go have a drink. In this case, the poor action is having a drink. And Khelzang Puntso continued by saying, likewise, in my hometown, there are many people who play cards because they're bored. This is laziness. They are apparently very interested in this activity, but nevertheless, it's laziness. That's the first type of laziness, the laziness of being attached to negative actions. The second type of laziness is defeatist state of mind, which is thinking, I'll never manage. For example, thinking that we will never attain the state of Buddhahood. This is a form of laziness. The third type of laziness is laziness of procrastination. I'm not the only one. I guess that was Sylvain's remark. This is putting things off for tomorrow. These were the 3 types of laziness that are presented, and Khelzang Puntso added that in certain texts we also find indolent laziness. And this is laziness that comes from having eaten too much. Apparently I'm also not the only one. This is a type of heaviness, inertia. And this inertia goes with the 5 sense consciousnesses. The function of laziness is hindering virtue. After this, Khelzang Puntso said, we all have the laziness of being attached to negative actions. It's hard for us to know that this is laziness because there's a kind of interest. And so it's difficult to see it as laziness. Nevertheless, this interest comes from laziness. People feel like they're very interested in playing cards and going to have a drink, but if we look deeper, there's laziness, and this type of laziness is difficult to grasp, difficult to understand. Again, the function of this laziness is to hinder the practice of virtue. because based on laziness, we don't have enthusiasm for virtuous practice. The fourth mental event of this great basis of sovereign mind marked by afflictive obscurations is absence of confidence. As we can imagine, this is the opposite of confidence, which we looked at yesterday, the first mental event of the great basis of virtuous mind. It's this confidence that is very clear and pure. So confidence has this aspect of clarity and purity. Absence of confidence is a mind that is marked by impurities that trouble confidence. We saw that confidence is, for example, a mind that is moved when we recognize the qualities of the Lama. If we perceive the qualities of someone and we are not convinced or interested in this, this is absence of confidence. We perceive the qualities, but we are unmoved by them. A mind, once again, this is a mind that is marked by impurities that trouble confidence. The function of the absence of confidence is producing laziness. When we are in the grips of absence of confidence, we don't see the qualities of the object that we are going towards, and we don't wish to acquire these qualities. Thus, on this basis, laziness appears. That was the fourth mental event here. Next comes torpor. Again, torpor. Torpor is a state of mind whose nature is heaviness, inertia. A state of mind whose focus is not clear. It is a mind that is focused, not even focused, it is pulled in. When we are affected by torpor, we don't remember well, we don't retain information, because torpor is not active or pliant or flexible. When we see an object, if we're affected by torpor, then we don't see it clearly, and thus we cannot remember it well. That was the fifth mental event here. The sixth and last mental event of this great basis of sovereign mind marked by afflictive obscurations is agitation. Agitation is a mind that is distracted by pleasant objects. A mind that is distracted by sensory enjoyment. When mind turns outward toward this sensory enjoyment, this acts as an obstacle to mental calm, shine. The function of agitation or excitement is acting as an obstacle to mental calm, calm abiding. In other words, shine. So here we have covered the 6 mental events that make up the great basis for every sovereign mind, marked by afflictive obscurations. From the moment that sovereign mind is marked by afflictive obscurations, these 6 mental events are always in the entourage of this afflicted mind. Please hang on to your question. Do we take another short break or keep going? Let's keep going with the 4th great basis of the 4th in this list, which is the great basis of non-virtuous sovereign mind. It's pretty quick. The great basis of non-virtuous sovereign mind is made up of 2 mental events. As the root text, stanza 26, line 4, stanza 27, line 1, around a non-virtuous sovereign mind, absence of respect and absence of consideration. Absence of respect, which is sometimes translated as effrontery, and absence of consideration, which is sometimes translated as impudence. These 2 mental events, likewise, or similar to the other great bases we have looked at, are always present around a non-virtuous sovereign mind. And so here there's just information about absence of consideration. When we speak of absence of consideration, this refers to the absence of gratitude. We saw that consideration is gratitude for one's kind Lama. The absence of consideration is the absence of gratitude, or not respecting beings who have shown great kindness to us, for example, our Lama or our parents. So this is the absence of gratitude for beings who have shown great kindness to us. This is all that Khelzang Puntso explained here. He said simply that we'll talk about these 2 mental events in more detail later. if you look at the outline, this appears in the section entitled The Difference between the absent between resembling mental events. There's a subsection entitled The Difference Between the Absence of Respect and the Absence of Consideration, so we'll find out more there. There's no further information in this section. And thus, we have concluded this fourth great basis. In any case, we'll go over all of these different mental events in one fashion or another in the following section. So now we come to the fifth and final great basis, which is the great basis of sovereign mind marked by related and minor afflictive obscurations. So here we'll talk about a little bit about this great basis of minor afflictive obscurations. We find this in stanza 27. Aggressiveness, resentment, evasive concealment, jealousy, meanness, direct concealment, greed, deceit, self-absorption, and violence. This is the great basis of sovereign mind marked by minor afflictive obscurations. So this is the great basis of sovereign mind marked by minor afflictive obscurations. The last line, the last sentence is in stanza 28. Why do we say minor afflictive obscurations, related and minor? Because these afflictive obscurations are like a smell left behind by the 6 major afflictive obscurations. Like a smell wafting off these 6 major afflictive obscurations. He didn't cite them here, but perhaps we can list them. Ignorance, desire, attachment, hatred, aversion, pride, doubt, and view. Ignorance, once again, ignorance, desire, attachment, hatred, aversion, pride, doubt, and view. Yeah, these were covered in the entry to the state of Apandita, but they're presented differently in the Abhidharmakosha. We'll start with the first one, aggressiveness. Choa in Tibetan. We'll start with an example. If someone has hurt us based on aversion, our mind may be even more agitated. We're so angry that we can't control it. Our mind, due to aversion, our mind is no longer free. And this is what we call aggressiveness. He says a little further on, aggressiveness is really wanting to hurt someone else. We can see here that there is a distinction between aversion and hatred. Aversion and hatred, aggressiveness. Which occurs when anger has become very strong and uncontrollable. In the Abhidharmakosha, we have this distinction between aversion and aggressiveness. In the entry to the state of a pandita, there is no problem of distinguishing these two because aggressiveness is included in aversion. I think it's nevertheless presented. For the Vaibhashika, aggressiveness is not included in aversion. Aggressiveness is really wanting to hurt the other person, other being, not just being angry. There is an intention of hurting the other one. Additionally, aversion is a major afflictive obscuration, one of the 6. And aggressiveness is a minor afflictive obscuration, related. And thus, aversion and aggressiveness are distinct. Another example, parents can feel anger or aversion toward their children. Nevertheless, they don't want to hurt them. They don't have aggressiveness toward their children. They don't have an intention of hurting them. But there can be anger or aversion. So this distinguishes the two. To conclude here, the function of aggressiveness is producing an action that can harm. Like, for example, wanting to hurt someone. have a doubt about this sentence. Wanting to attack someone, that's already was the definition of aggressiveness. So it doesn't make sense that it would be a function. That's a personal aside. Next up, in this great basis of sovereign mind, marked by minor and related afflictive obscurations, we come to rancor or resentment. Kuntu Tsimpa in Tibetan. So this resentment or rancor is a mind of revenge, holding on to rancor in relation to the harm that has been done to us. The function of rancor or resentment is producing impatience. With this rancor or resentment, we never feel calm. Now we come to the third mental event of this great basis, which is evasive concealment or duplicity. Yo in Tibetan. Yo. Yoa. Evasive concealment. For this, we can imagine that someone has carried out a poor action, and so the Lama will ask this person, "Did you do this?" The person will try to find a way to conceal their harmful action. Will try to work around it. The person doesn't want to lie, but wants to hide the truth. We don't want to lie, we want to hide the truth, to conceal our action. For example, if we have drunk alcohol, this person drank alcohol and then someone asks them if they drank, and the person won't say no, but they'll try to explain that they were with friends. It's not no, but there were circumstances. When we are in the power of this mental event that that hides, we cannot obtain instructions from a virtuous friend. That was the third mental event here. Now we come to the fourth, jealousy. Chato. Don't quote me on the Tibetan pronunciation. Chato. In any case, jealousy is intolerance concerning all that is excellent among others, wealth, beauty, fame, etc. We find all that is excellent for others to be intolerable. If we see other people's qualities, we don't accept them, we don't tolerate them. When affected by jealousy, mind is not at peace. Next comes the fifth, meanness or exasperation. Tsikpa. Khelzang Puntso here says that according to the entry to the state of a pandita, meanness is that affected by rancor or resentment, this state of mind of revenge, we will use harsh words toward the one who has done us wrong. Meanness is caused by resentment. It makes us use harsh words. The function of meanness, exasperation, is producing attachment to non-virtuous acts, enthusiasm for non-virtue. He didn't say any more about this. The question was, is it the same in the Abhidharmakosha? I mean, this is the explanation that he gave here. Maybe we'll do two more. The sixth in this group is direct concealment, or simply concealment. So here we have direct concealment, as we have another mental event that is evasive concealment. So this is chappa in Tibetan. Direct concealment is hiding a flaw or a misdeed. direct concealment is similar to evasive concealment in the sense that it consists in hiding a flaw. The difference is that concerning evasive concealment, there's no intention to lie. The idea was more to squirm out of things. So that was for concerning evasive concealment. However, with direct concealment, we lie directly without looking for a way out. Thus, it's direct. To hide a flaw. The function of direct concealment is producing regret later. The seventh of this list is avarice or greed, serna in Tibetan. Greed is the opposite of generosity. It is wanting our wealth to never diminish and for it to always increase. This is always wanting more. For example, if we have 100 rupees, Khelzang Puntso said, we could say 100 euros, we always want to have more, never less. Probably also works with 1,000,000 euros or 1,000,000,000 euros. Or 1,000,000,000 rupees. The function of avarice is to act as an obstacle to generosity. Okay, we'll conclude here for today. You can ask questions if you have them. It wasn't explained, but I'm having a bit of trouble understanding the fact that all of these mental events are present together. I can understand that there's one or the other, but that simultaneously? The answer is perhaps a bit too easy, but for example, concerning the great basis of sovereign mind, marked by afflictive obscurations, Khelzang Puntso explained concerning torpor and agitation that both are present at the same time. And he said, we don't really see them because they're very subtle. Nevertheless, they're both present. We're not talking about the kind of torpor where we can really see it. We don't see agitation in it, because when torpor is very strongly present, the mind is sort of opaque. But Khelzang Puntso explained that agitation is nevertheless present, but it's very subtle. It can't be seen directly. He explained that there are two types of torpor and agitation: coarse torpor and agitation, and subtle torpor and agitation. And when it's coarse, we can't see the difference between them, and when they're subtle, we don't see it. In any case, it's very clear in that the way that things are explained, that for the great bases, with the exception of the one that we're looking at right now, concerning minor and related afflictive obscurations, the great basis of sovereign mind marked by minor and afflictive obscurations, other than this one, all of the other great bases, they have all of the mental events that are listed for them present at the same time. That's how it's presented. A personal aside is that we receive all this information, but it's really helpful to take time and reflect on it, because certain things can make sense just when we take time, spend time with it. Obviously, if your questions persist, we can exchange about it more. Ignorance here is a translation of the term mongpa. I think it's the same definition that's given for marikpa in the entry to the state of a pandita. In fact, the time that this was being translated, Dhagpo, the translator, actually added a note. He said, Mongpa, Marikpa, Timuk mean the same thing. And so he translated Mongpa as ignorance. Behind this idea of ignorance, I think that we find this notion of not knowing the motive being of the truth of the Noble Ones. There must be nuances, yeah? Probably. Also, this makes me think about discernment. We saw that in the text here, the term used is l'autre, but it refers to sherab. So again, there may be nuances, but it's not explained here. I didn't make it to the last session, so maybe my question won't make sense, but can you please explain the meaning of a virtuous sovereign mind? Because from the entry to the state of a pandita, my understanding of sovereign mind is that it's what grasps the generality of an object, and this is the first time that I've heard it described as virtuous or non-virtuous. A precise definition, I don't have one at hand. However, we could say that here we're looking at what a virtuous sovereign mind is. It is a sovereign mind that has these 10 mental events around it. Virtuous sovereign mind is one that is accompanied by the mental events of the great basis of virtuous sovereign mind. And one that is non-virtuous is one that is accompanied by the two mental events of the great basis of non-virtuous sovereign mind, and one that is marked by afflictive obscurations is a mind that is accompanied by the mental events of the great basis of sovereign mind, marked by afflictive obscurations. In the next session of the Chinrezig curriculum, we'll look at which mental events are present around which mind. I'm not sure if it will fully answer your question, but we'll see that around virtuous sovereign mind, certain mental events are present, and may not completely answer your question, but it goes in that direction. Yeah, indeed, because right now we're just listing the 5 great bases, but there are quite a lot of explanations following this. So, just to bounce back, I understood that for the 5 great bases, if there's one, then all the others are present. This is true for the first 4 great bases. The 5th great basis has a slightly different way of functioning. All 10 are not present at the same time. They are present individually. Concerning which mental events are present, we'll probably get there tomorrow. The other question I wanted to ask is concerning these last 7 that we looked at, the function is not necessarily given. For direct concealment, there's a function which is producing regret later. That seems great, but does it work every time? And did we get the function for evasive concealment? Indeed, the function for evasive concealment is that it prevents us from receiving instruction from a spiritual friend. And the thing about direct concealment is that it produces regret. Wouldn't that be, it produces regret. Wouldn't that be a good thing? I wondered the same thing. The function of these minor afflictive obscurations, most of the time their function is negative. But like you, I noticed for direct concealment, it brings regret later. Regret is one of the 8 undetermined mental events that we may get to later. Regret can be virtuous or non-virtuous. I had a similar thought. We'll conclude here. Thank you all. See you tomorrow, and remember we start a half hour earlier tomorrow. 2:30. Thank you.